I'm gonna go down this rabbit hole right here. But if you find your mentee in a tough situation and it's just not ideal, I'm not saying it's life threatening. I'm not saying that there's, it's a drug den that they live in or something. I'm not saying that. I'm not going that far. But if it's just not ideal or not your standard, do your best to support them. Okay? Do your best to support them. But do your best to not involve or jeopardize that child's livelihood unless you're willing to take them into your house and have them live with you and you take care of them. I just want to put that out there. Because sometimes calling the police could be much more damage, can cause much more damage than it is helping. Because in your mind, and I'm talking to our white allies, in our white allies' mind, the police are supposed to help. But now, at the light of everything that's going on, you're realizing that your treatment, the treatment that you may receive from the police and the treatment that we receive are two different treatments.
Thank you for pointing that out, Roy. That's important to know as well. Obviously, we all have different life experiences when it comes to law enforcement. So it's important to be aware, sensitive to everyone's viewpoints on how folks interact with law enforcement. Great points. Does anyone else want to touch on this subject on? And again, the question is, what can our allies do to better serve youth of color? Because we have a lot of allies that are mentors and they want to do the best of the job that they can. And right now, with everything that's happening, a lot of people don't know what they can do, how to have those conversations, how to, just get the combo started. So that's where we're at. Thomas, I see you have yourself unmuted. Tremaine, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of tie this in with also seeing a question in the chat by Mitchell as well, just talking about coworkers and executive levels, not just speaking to youth. But I think being able to have a conversation with our allies or coworkers or employees of those who we're trying to mentor up with would be them allowing themselves to go through having a paradigm shift. That would be for you as a white ally joining in. Would you be willing to have a paradigm shift and not just going with your own assumptions, with your own culture, with your own background? And it still starts with listening, but I think it goes a little bit deeper than listening, because it does still go with the education. It goes into you understanding the cultural dynamics. I have one example. When I went to Africa, the first thing we did, we were there for a mission trip. The first thing they took us through was a cultural training, the difference between hot climate and cold climate. So there are certain things that are within your culture or within quote unquote your standards that would look different than someone else's culture and standards that you would assume, or you would go in with same thing, guns a-blazing, like Roy said, calling the police, or different standards that may not be adjustable within our culture and our communities or whoever you're talking to. So starting there with being able to go through having a paradigm shift, I think would be huge.
Thank you, Thomas. Tremaine?
Yeah, I'll try to make it quick, but I'd like to see more of our allies immerse themselves in our organizations, our churches, with the protests and marches that were happening. To be honest, it looked like it was more of our white allies there than some Black people that were attending the marches. So I would say that our white allies or non-Black allies need to be involved in the organizations and the churches and different aspects of our culture, just to learn and be an example for their mentees. Say, hey, I don't just talk this, I live this. So that's the input that I have.
Yeah. If I can pick up right where Tremaine left off, because I think you touched on something very key. In the protest moment right now, let's not make this a fad. The thing is, I think a lot of people felt comfortable, safe, going out to protest, and because everybody else was doing it, or because it was on the news, and people felt, or they joined a social media group and they went collectively. So don't just make this a fad. What I would encourage you to do, just like Tremaine said, get involved with the community, get involved in various organizations, because you can join the Urban League, you can join the NAACP, you can join a African American church. If you don't, this is for my pastors on the call. If you don't have a church home, find you a church home. Go. I mean, and my point is participate in the culture, because for many of us, the church is where we have community, so to speak. It's not just not just those isolated groups, but the church is a great place to network, to build relationship. And if you have a mentee, you should be able to offer that mentee an opportunity to worship with you. I think that takes it to a whole nother level. So I'll just.
Well, no, Roy, thank you for that. Because so when you sign up through our organization to become a mentor, during the intake process, we actually interview you and we ask questions in regards to your sort of your life, your upbringing, your interests, your likes, because we then try to take that data and pair that up with the data of a youth to ensure that there is a sustainable, long-lasting relationship, okay? And so I just want to share this with everyone on the call in terms of adverse childhood experiences. They're called ACEs. I'm sure many of you have heard of them before. A lot of the kids we serve have ACEs, at least 2 or more. So the CDC did a study a few years back on ACEs, and the ACE can be anything from an incarcerated parent to any sort of domestic violence in the home, food insecurity, housing insecurity, etc. The data showed that for any kid that has 2 or more of those experiences, the likelihood of them using drugs or alcohol increases. The likelihood of them engaging in risky behaviors increases. They have a lower mortality rate, all these negative outcomes. And they said the one way to mitigate those negative outcomes is to provide access to a stable, nurturing adult. That's it. So the answer is providing access to a stable, nurturing adult. And that's what we focus on here at Big Brothers Big Sisters, is to give our youth access to a stable, nurturing adult, to help intervene and break these generations and cycles of poverty and challenge, and to show them a different pathway. And so that's the focus here and what we do with this organization. So I'm glad you brought that up, Roy, because it's good to share your life experiences with our youth. So let's get a little personal here. We all know that we all have that one person in our life that was there for us as a mentor. So what I want to know, and please share with the audience, who was that person, and how did that person help you get to where you are now? And I know that's a loaded question, but let's see if you guys can give us some short answers on who this person was and how they helped you become the person you are today.
All right, I'll start it off. It's my dad. He's still living, great man. He really gave me my entrepreneurial, what's the word I'm looking for? Just that aptitude, that desire to be my own man and make my own money. Just really take charge of how my life ends up. My dad had a tow truck company when I was a kid. He had several employees, and he just always talked about how proud he was of his ability to build up his company to where it was before he ended up selling his business. But yeah, he's a great role model. Had a lot of friends who were also mentors to me. He took me to church a lot as a child, and definitely talked a lot about education and why it was important for me to work as hard as I needed to work in order to get scholarships to go to college and that kind of thing. So that was my role model.
Thank you for sharing, Tremaine. Ashlee?
Yes. So Tremaine, mine's is pretty much the same thing, and that's with my mom. I would say that's my lifelong mentor. And just from a young age, I observed her being a single parent, caring for 2 children while holding a career and going to school for her bachelor's. So it was just amazing to see her transformation and her just steadying the course, and she had a goal in mind. So I get that from her, and I'm going to get there for the most part. I would say she's definitely a definition of a boss lady. She's also, I've seen her grow up within corporate America. She actually retired a couple of weeks ago after 44 years of work. So I just pray that I'm half the woman that she is. And I just, like Tremaine, she surrounded me by a village of like-minded boss women from different fields, and that I was able to observe, and they would tag me along to different opportunities, education within our community, immersing me in my culture here in Arizona. And I'm just, they are the ones that brought me to who I am today.
Thank you, Ashlee. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Jeff?
I'll kind of echo what's already been said. I mean, my parents laid my mother and father laid like a great foundation where I was able to hear the messages of other people. I think that that's vital in terms of getting you prepared to be able to hear the message. There's not much, I mean, like from a 2-minute standpoint, it's not much more I can get into in 2 minutes, but they've definitely helped me to be the person who I am today.
Awesome.
I will also echo what's been said. I will say my father, first and foremost, taught me the street. I got street smarts from my father. But the academic smarts or the political aspirations I gained from a friend of my family whose uncle was the Virginia Black Legislative Caucus chair. His name was Gerald Jones. And when I saw how people responded to him and gathered around him and hung on his every word, I had to meet him and learn about him. I met him at 15 years old. And when I got to college, I remember I called his office to say, Gerald, I'm in college. I'm majoring in I chose political science. You inspired me to go into political science, and I need an internship. He said, get me a resume and come to the Virginia General Assembly. So I'm going to I'm 18, going to the Virginia General Assembly to interview my grandmother. I'm telling you this story because it's like a community thing. Like my grandmother went to J.C. Penney. She said, I want you to go to J.C. Penney. I want you to get it measured and send me your measurements. I'm dead serious. This is a true story. She said, send me your measurements. So I went to J.C. Penney right by Virginia State University, sent her the measurements. She went and bought a suit on the J.C. Penney charge card. So y'all know this is a big deal when your grandma puts something on the charge card, and I went and got the suit. And so my point to go to get an internship at the Virginia General Assembly. And coming from a family where my father didn't graduate college, my mother didn't graduate college, my grandparents didn't go to college, to be at the Virginia General Assembly with the Virginia Black Legislative Caucus chair, man, you couldn't tell me nothing. So my point is, Gerald became a mentor to me because I became what was called his aide de camp, which means I drove him, I went and got coffee, I carried his briefcase, but I would be in high-level meetings with Virginia legislators, the governors, senators. I just got to sit. I don't have an opinion. I can't say anything. But my point is, I absorbed so much through those experiences, and that's probably Gerald. I talk to Gerald almost every other day today. And his son, let me say this, his son now, Gerald Jones as well, Gerald Jones Jr., he's running for Virginia Attorney General right now. So I ran his initial campaign in 2017. And so these are things that are really serious for me. And a person like Gerald literally changed my life because he didn't have to take me under his wing like he did. Literally changed my life.
Wow. And so, well, it's obvious the impact that Gerald had on you as a mentor. And you're right, this is life-changing work. I mean, you were able to recount that memory like it was yesterday. JCPenney charge card, the measurements, grandma and everything. I mean, this is the type of work that we're talking about that can transform communities, transform livelihoods. And so this is very powerful work. And guess what? It doesn't cost anything to be a mentor. It doesn't cost anything but time, giving your time. That's it. That's what it really starts at, right? We're not asking anyone to come in and be a savior. We're not asking you to be someone's mother or father. We're asking you to be a mentor, a friend in a time of need for our youth. And so did any of the panelists want to touch on and share someone that has impacted their life? Did everyone go? Thomas, everyone go? Jeff, I see you unmuted yourself. You have something else you want to add? Thomas, go ahead.
Go ahead, Thomas.
Well, I would just echo the same thing. I would say the village, because I think even back to our white allies and everyone has a gift or something to offer. So for me, it did start in my home with my parents. You know, they gave me components of it, but then my grandparents, they also contributed to some things. My brother's 13 years older than me, so he had a wealth of experience of life that he was able to guide to me, kind of like a second father figure to be kind of give me insights into certain things. My coaches, they helped guide me around setting examples. They were my friends' dads. So being part of the village and having everyone kind of give input or outlet into just their one thing. So I would encourage everyone who is listening on here, you have that one thing to be able to offer and to pour into the kid. For my grandmother, it was, she read the Bible and she prayed. So, you know, those are my two nuggets that I took away from her. My other grandmother, she went to church and she told me to get an education, you know, so I think everyone has those little nuggets, and collectively over time, it kind of gave me, you know, options to be able to pull from and to build with, versus the few negative perspectives that I was able to see. And I think those positive images outweighed the negative images for me.
Absolutely. Representation is extremely important. Seeing someone that looks like you in a high level position, in any position, be it business, politics, entrepreneurship, nonprofit, civic engagement, is key for our youth. Jeff, did you have, go ahead, please.
Let me also say, I don't want to overtalk, but man, this stuff is coming, and I just want to share it because to me, the power of a mentor is you have the ability to see in your mentee what they don't even see in themselves. And that's what I feel like happened for me. It was somebody being able to see something in me that I didn't see in myself until I was able to see it. And they kind of held on, you know, kind of like training wheels. If you ever, when you learn how to ride a bike, you know, or you taught someone how to ride a bike, you have your training wheels on and you hold the seat while they learning how to ride the bike. And once you realize that they get it, you begin to let the seat go. And you begin to pedal yourself. And so I think that's life. And the power of a mentor and the mentee relationship is that trust that, hey, I'm going to teach you how to ride this bike. I'm going to hold on to the seat. You're going to do the work. Now, you still do the work. The mentee still has work to do. And so it's just being a guide as a mentor to help make sure that they're on the right track.
No, you're absolutely right. You're just a guide. You're just a guide. And I think that's important to know. Jeff, did you have something to touch on before we move on to our next question? I'm sorry.
I was just going to kind of share, honestly, Thomas touched on it as well, but, you know, we all have gifts. And, you know, I think that a lot of times we want to be this perfect entity before we, you know, put our impression on a child. And, you know, I think that the imperfection is what allows the child to navigate and, you know, live vicariously through their mentor in terms of seeing what to do and even what not to do, you know, other than the representation that they get on a regular basis. So it just adds some spice to life, texture in terms of, you know, growing up and, you know, bobbing and weaving.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of what we're discussing here is an investment. You're making it an investment in the life of someone else. And a lot of times what we see is that these mentorships last a very long time. I hear stories of mentors getting invited by their mentees to attend their graduations, weddings, and other life events. I'm sure that you all have had some of those experiences, right? Mentoring is sort of this lifelong thing. And it's so beautiful when it's able to get to that point. Now, let me ask you all this. If you had a time machine to go back to when you were 15 years old, what would you tell yourself? What would you tell your 15-year-old self? What advice would you give your 15-year-old self?
I'll say the advice I give my guy all the time is looking at school from a different vantage point. And, you know, school is like exercising your brain in terms of, you know, a lot of kids are like, oh, why do I have to learn this or why do I have to learn that? But it's just like exercising. It's like going to the gym shooting free throws. You know, so if you expand your brain's capacity, its abilities, you know, you'll have a greater capacity to put what you want in it once you get through that, get through school. You know, so that kind of like adds fuel, even for me today, thinking of like learning in that capacity. And, you know, I think that kids can benefit from having that change in perception in terms of school, those that, you know, don't necessarily see the fun in, you know, social studies and things.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on, Jeff. Repetition is key, right? Exercising that muscle, right, is key. And so, right, and so that's the question. You know, what would you tell your 15-year-old self? If you had to mentor your 15-year-old self, what would you say? Any of the panelists, go ahead and unmute yourself and you can share. Go ahead, Ashlee.
Yeah, I would say just not to be afraid to speak up and ask questions, and not be afraid of opportunities that are coming your way. I know when I was younger, I was on the shy end and, you know, was afraid to voice my opinion and to join certain clubs and to join, you know, certain jobs and things of that nature. And, you know, I feel like I would have been a lot further in life if I would have spoken up and said my opinion with things. Of course, I wouldn't take back anything that I've done because it's life lessons, but just to speak up, and then also not to follow the crowd. You are your own leader. You do what's right for you and what feels right to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ashlee, for sharing. Roy?
Ashlee said exactly what I wanted to say about you being your own leader, and not doing things to just please everybody else or to make people like you or to be their friend. You've got to be, first and foremost, you've got to be your best friend. And I would say also that I would have, I was 15, and it was 1991, I was 15, and we were angry. A lot of us were angry. One, because I'm talking about, we saw Rodney King. We didn't know about the whole verdict. We didn't know what was going to happen, but we literally saw what happened to Rodney King in 1991. And a lot of us were angry. We were listening to rap and rapping all, you know, what was out then, from NWA, the Public Enemy, the X-Clan, Big Daddy Kane, all that, KRS-One. And so, you know, the great hip hop. But but at the same time, my mother would say, if you can rap that, you can do your work. If you can rap what you just rapping, you can do social studies, you can do your science, you can do. So she tried to get me to pay attention to realize my own gift, you know. And I'm like, you know, what are you talking about? But she really said, you like, and that's for all of our children. A lot of our children are super talented. So let's help reinforce their gifts, but also we got to channel that energy into a productive way. That's what I would tell myself.
And I love that, Roy, the analogy you used, that your grandma said, your mom said, hey, if you can rap that rap, you should wrap your brain around in social studies and memorize these facts. And that's sort of the same logic that we try to have today as parents and as mentors with our kids of today. There's a huge concern that we have right now with virtual learning. And we know it's not the best option for every student, but I think it's safe to say that if your child knows how to make a TikTok video, or if they play Xbox online and they can build a whole world in Minecraft, they could probably learn some things virtually. So our youth are resilient. They are smart. We got to give them a little bit more credit. And so, a great point, Roy. Any other panelists like to share? What advice would they give their 15-year-old self if you were mentoring yourself as a teenager? All right, that works. So let's move on to our next discussion point, our next question. Currently, at Big Brothers Big Sisters, we have over 100 little brothers on the waiting list. Okay, over 100 little brothers on the waiting list that are waiting for Big Brother. I want to know, How do we get more folks involved in your opinion? What's it going to take to get people in our community to mentor our own youth? 105 boys, predominantly Black and brown. What can we do as a community, as a Black community, to get more people involved in mentoring? What would you tell folks?
I would say I'm not a big, but I'm familiar with the program. I think it would be impactful to hear from bigs, from those who are big brothers and big sisters, to hear about their experience, and maybe figure out a way to elevate that platform to a broader audience, whether it's our social groups, because we've got a number of organizations represented, the fraternities, the sororities, the churches. We've got to take that message, or maybe the message of big brothers and big sisters needs to be on a broader platform, so more people can hear it, and those that may have the means, the time, and the will, and the patience, probably. I'm just speculating that that's all you need, all those things, to be a big brother or big sister. Just my thoughts.
No, thank you for sharing that, Roy. And that's the whole reason why we're having this discussion, right? Is to talk about how we can uplift the youth in our community and really uplift ourselves, because we know that there are benefits for us as mentors, right? You now have a sense of purpose and a sense of self, right? You now get to mentor, you now get to network with like-minded individuals. And so I see that Jeff has unmuted himself, and he's a big brother. So Jeff, I'm curious to hear your perspective on this.
Well, you know, it's been a great program. Like I mentioned, I've been a big for 4.5 years. You know, I think that it's easy to attract people that are already in that mental position that want to be mentors. I think that the way to attract not the larger audience, but a different audience and more people is to talk about the benefits. To your point, you mentioned, you know, the networking opportunities, you know, the people that you meet through the organization. Honestly, the impact that you get from the mentee, you know, in terms of challenging your thought process, challenging the speed at which you move, the questions that you ask, the impression that you make on a daily basis. I mean, we're in Phoenix, you know, we had Charles Barkley who said, "I'm not a mentor," you know, or "I'm not a role model." And it takes the kid to understand how much of an impact you make with every action and reaction that you have on a daily basis. And, you know, I think that those two things in combination can get more people to act. Because I feel like, you know, of course, you know, you need a good heart to do this type of work, but everybody doesn't have altruism in the mindset. And if people can see the what's in it for me aspect of it, in terms of meeting great people, I mean, you look at the people on this call, you know, it's worth its price in gold.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I agree with you, Jeff. Obviously, Big Brothers Big Sisters, as I mentioned, has been around in the Valley for 65 years. We have a very strong reputation in our community of trust. And so sometimes when you volunteer for an organization and you attach yourself to our brand, that can bring a lot of personal benefits too in your personal life. Tremaine, I see you have yourself unmuted, and then we'll go over to Thomas.
Right. So yeah, you know, I think the testimonials would be a great attraction for men who are looking to be mentors. But you know, I wonder. You know, I'm not totally immersed in what Big Brothers Big Sisters does, but are there events that you could put on that tap into that kid, not only for the mentee but the mentor? I'm talking about that child spirit, like a big field day or a big video game day that is part of that big benefit package of being involved in the organization and being involved with the kid. Is there some type of huge event that the organization could put on that is kind of like an end of the year celebration for you know, developing that relationship with the mentee and It could be some kind of fundraiser. I guess that's kind of an idea and a question all in one. So.
Yeah, and Tremaine, you're absolutely right. And under normal circumstances, we'd be able to do a lot more of those events, but due to the pandemic, we've had to cancel a lot of these, obviously a lot of these outreach events. But we do have a perk for bigs. It's when you sign up to become a community mentor, a community-based big. We have a website called Think Big, and on this website, think of it as a free Ticketmaster. We have tickets to concerts and shows and different types of activities out in the community that you and your youth can do together, and it's super fun. And I think it brings out the kid in both folks in the relationship, especially like as you said, Tremaine, it brings out that kid in you, and you get to now experience the fun in that. And now you even have an excuse to go do some of these kid things, right? That a lot of times we might want to do, but we say, hey, we're grown folk, we can't be doing that. But look, now you got a little, and you can go enjoy yourselves together. But yes, Tremaine, I agree with you on that. Thank you for sharing those ideas with us, Thomas, and then we'll go Miss Ashlee. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, let me ask. I'm kind of thinking of it as an event that the organization does together, like the mentors and mentees, the hundreds, thousands in the valley. They all do it together, like one big or two big events per year, not just like you get tickets to the Suns game or something like that. Like it's something that everybody is doing together, something along those lines.
Absolutely.
We could talk offline about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, and I love it. And I love the feedback and I love the ideas because you're right, Tremaine. So let's get working on that. We're going to need some hands for that one. I love it though. Thomas?
Well, that was my mindset was around us reimagining what mentoring can look like, and almost building that onboarding ramp to it. So I think it's a heavy commitment. I think a lot of people are afraid of that heavy commitment to mentoring and the responsibility that comes along with it. So we could create smaller tidbits where they can taste it, and kind of experience a little bit of it, and then kind of lead them into more. That's what we've done with My Brother's Keeper Collective and the city of Tempe, and with AARP with the reading programs and stuff like that. But I think also now, back to the first question that we started the conversation off, again, reimagining what mentoring can look like. And now that, again, after seeing George Floyd and all these businesses and everyone's trying to give funds and resources, people are asking, what can we do? I mean, I think this is a reparation opportunity to kind of go back and say, put money, put time, with your work, give your employees time to commit to this, and kind of being able to rekindle these relationships with these businesses, to really give them opportunity to present themselves, and creating packages and programs like that to leverage on where they're at now, and giving them a clear, easy onboarding process.
Thomas, you and absolutely 100% agree with you. And as an organization, Big Brothers Big Sisters, when the state shut down due to the pandemic, we had to immediately leverage technology and pivot so we could still serve our youth. Because guess what? The state might be locked down, we might be in quarantine, but our youth still need us. The need has not gone away. And in fact, we've seen the need increase. So what we've done is we've gone 100% virtual with onboarding. So your whole onboarding for becoming a mentor is completely virtual. Your intake interview, your application, the information session, all done virtual. And now we're even incorporating virtual mentoring. So for example, I have a little brother, and me and him hop on FaceTime. Just the other day, we made macaroni and cheese together. Before that, we did some water painting. Before that, we did some Xbox Live together. So these kids are flexible. We got to leverage technology, because guess what? These kids still need someone. They still need that relationship and that access. And so great points, Thomas. And I just want to touch, because someone made a comment here in the chat room that said, hey, I'm going to bring this back to my work. I'm going to bring this and share this with my company. That's great. If you want to share our program at your company, please, I put my contact information in the chat. Reach out to me, and we can certainly set that up. And we would love to partner with any organization that you're a part of in order to get the word out. Ashlee, I think you had something, and then Brother Roy.
I would say, I'm going back to your question as far as what we would advise our 15-year-old selves as a mentor. So I would say simply putting yourself in our youth's shoes. you were young once, you were needing guidance, and you needed to navigate through life and through adulthood, and just asking yourself, where would you be today if you went back in time and had a predominant a mentor for that. So I think that would sell me on being a mentor itself, and in a way of giving back to what you may have not had or that you did get, and to, you know, extend an olive branch to our youth.
Absolutely, Ashlee. Right on point. Roy, I saw you unmute yourself. Did you have something?
You did. I would just say all of the NAACP branches have a youth division as well. And so if you are looking to network your youth or your littles, I won't even get the language right, they can also become a part of our youth division, which also provides a ton of activities at their level, and they run their own branch. You know this. They run their own branch. So as a part of the NAACP, I would just say that could be a tremendous resource for our young people as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for that vehicle, Roy. That's great to share. Would you mind putting your website in the chat for NAACP in case folks want to check that out and they want to involve their mentee or their little into the program? So at this time, folks, I do want to jump into some of the questions we have in the chat from our attendees. And the first question I want to ask folks is, this is a great question asked by Corey. He says, how would you explain the difference between rioting and protesting to young people whom their first experience might have been with protesting, might have turned into a riot? Which is a great question. So how do you have that conversation with the youth? How do you explain the difference between a protest and a riot? I know it's a challenging one. Sometimes that's not an easy answer, but these are the types of things that our youth oftentimes have, on their mind. And we, as mentors, we have to be able to, we get to be prepared in order to have these or address these questions that our youth might ask us. If they're looking up to us for guidance, it's important to share these things. And again, we know these aren't easy conversations, but I guarantee it'll probably come up sooner or later, if it already hasn't, if you're a mentor. Roy?
I have, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Roy. Oh, I'm sorry. So, yeah, go ahead, Roy. I see you have your video unmuted.
I do. Just to address from a technical standpoint, the protest is to bring awareness around the issue that is not being addressed by our elected officials, those who are supposed to represent the people. And many times that is the inception of the protest, to bring about awareness. When the riot starts, we're talking about the destruction. We're talking about the fire. We're talking about breaking into stores and the looting. So that's where the difference is. And many of those that may participate in that activity may not be a part of the protest. More so, they become opportunists of the protest.
Very important to distinguish. Thank you, Roy, for providing that clarity. Thomas?
Yeah, I would say around the same thing. I would say a riot is birthed out of anger, and I could say a protest could be more in a space of controlled anger. And for my teaching, it's always a good opportunity to kind of be able to explain and teach history. So being able to go back and showcase, like what happened with the Montgomery boycott and the March on Washington, or I think it's a good educational opportunity to be able to explain where there have been successful riots. And we don't have to go that far back, but I mean, even more modern day riot or protests that have been effective and productive. So I think teaching I say protests would have strategy, protests would have goals, versus riot, Roy said it best, I think opportunists kind of capitalize on what they want for the moment. And again, it's birthed out of anger. Maybe there's no structure or no end goal to the end of a riot.
Thank you for sharing. Any other panelists want to comment on that question that we had from one of our attendees? And please, attendees, please place your questions in the chat, and we'll go ahead and get those answered right now. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I would just add that, you know, I think it's important. It's almost like our central theme is getting the mentee talking, asking what their perception of what's going on is, and just offering to polish the rough edges and, you know, put some guardrails on them in terms of, you know, what their definition of the difference between those two is. I think that that's vital, you know, because not only do you have a grounds for more education, but you can also see where their mindset is in terms of what they've already seen and been taught, and, you know, are, you know, in that moment.
Yeah, no, yeah, thank you for that. Anyone else want to touch before I move on? And look, I am so thankful to have these courageous conversations with y'all. I mean, these are real questions that people need answers to. And I certainly believe, and I think we can all agree, that mentoring can be a huge part of the solution in terms of moving our community forward. And so I see a lot of folks reaching out and saying they would like to get their organization or their corporation involved. That is fantastic. There is a link in the chat for those who are interested in becoming a BIG. There's a link in the chat to our website where you can actually schedule an info session to go ahead and get started with the process. And once you complete that info session, we'll send you an application. If you would like to get your business involved, please send me your email. I'm going to throw mine in the chat. And I encourage all of our panelists to also put their contact information, their email in the chat, because listen, this is what it's all about. It's networking. It's being able to network in order to uplift each other in our community, right? And so before we wrap up, I want to know, what can we do as a Black community? What can we do as a Black community to support each other, to mentor each other? Because sometimes, right, it's our youth, but how do we grow that from our youth to our community? What do we need to do?
I have a mic. I would say, because I had another question for you, Devin. I was going to ask you before we go into this closing segment, maybe can you give us maybe a high level overview of what is the vetting process? What are the requirements to become a mentor with big brothers and big sisters? What, you know, I'm sure there's an application, I'm sure there's an interview, but is there a credit check? Is there a criminal background check? Is there, you got to bring 5 years of taxes? I mean, you know, everybody might not have their taxes together.
Yeah, no, great question, Roy. And you're stealing all my thunder for my virtual information sessions. But I'm gonna go ahead. No, you're good. You're good. I'm just giving you a hard time. The eligibility requirements are this, okay? We do conduct a background check, and the background check is $33, okay? You have to at least be 18 years old. You have to have reliable transportation with insurance, okay? You have to be able to commit to mentoring for at least 12 months, okay? 12 months and you have to commit to senior youth between 2 to 4 times a month, at a minimum of twice a month for 12 months, okay? But yes, listen, Roy, we do a background check, and that's because the most important thing when it comes to serving our youth is safety. And we want to ensure that our children are safe when we're pairing them with adults. This is a very serious, sort of responsibility that we have. And when you become a mentor in our program, you become a mandated reporter. So if you see something wrong, you have to speak up. And we do have, of course, pre-trainings that you'll take before you even get matched. But those are the eligibility requirements for becoming a BIG, right? So we're not checking your taxes, but we are ensuring that you're in a position, and this is sort of a question you have to ask yourself. Am I expecting any life changes? Is there anything coming up in which I'm predicting that I might move to a different state? Am I expecting to start a family? Because these are all things you want to take into consideration, because what we don't want to happen is you sign up to become a mentor, but then you have to, vacate 2-3 months in, because what that does is actually cause more harm than had you not become a mentor in the first place. So while the commitments aren't as heavy as, you know, as they seem, again, 12 months at a minimum of twice a month for an hour, everyone can do that. But again, you want to ask yourself, you know, personally, are you in the right place in terms of your life to be able to go ahead and take on this commitment, okay? But thank you, Roy, for that. And we do cover eligibility, training, and our mentoring programs in our information session, in our volunteer information session. But thank you, Roy, for bringing that up. But those are the requirements. So we'll go back to the original question before I go back to a question in the chat here. So what can we do as a Black community to uplift each other and to leverage mentorship to help move our community forward?
Well, I'll say I work in a networking type of position where I meet and talk to a lot of people on a regular basis, whether it's via Zoom or meeting people at coffee shops and things. And I think that that's been the benefit to my my business exponentially, and just like having conversations and investing the time in other people to hear what they have to say, hear their story, hear their experiences. And, you know, I feel like we can live vicariously through other people so we all don't have to bump our head on the same 2x4.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Any other panelists want to touch on that before I jump back into the chat box to answer a few questions before we wrap up? Thomas, I see you unmuted. You're saying, and Ashlee, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Thomas?
Ashlee? Okay. I would say, yeah, I mean, I agree. This panel right here, again, I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be able to share and learn from all the panelists here. But again, I didn't know that Big Brother, Big Sister's been around for 65 years. So, you know, these platforms and these spaces, and then being able to learn from, again, the platform and all the experiences that you all have already gone through, and the cool process that you all have for Big, and again, being able to know what you guys are already doing for littles. And again, instead of creating competitive spaces within our Black community, figuring out how we can leverage each other's different strengths, and I call them superpowers. So I call it the Avenger model. You know, I think every organization and every individual has a different superpower that we can utilize and come together. And now that we're focused on serving our Black or our youth, our littles, we can approach it like the Avengers of, okay, this is a problem. How do we solve this like Avengers together, instead of competing and being able to get on one page on one accord?
Thank you, Thomas, for that. Because we're all about that mantra at Big Brothers Big Sisters. We're not here to compete. The need is so great. There's plenty of work for everybody. So we must support and must leverage partnerships in our community. There are over 180,000 youth just within Maricopa County that need our services. We can't possibly do that on our own. We have to partner. We have to leverage each other's strengths. And so thank you for bringing up that point, Thomas. Ashlee?
Yes, I agree with both of you, both Thomas and Devin, in regards to leveraging our partnerships and doing what we can within our own separate organizations to get the word out and the benefits of becoming a mentor for that fact. I know with the young professionals, we try to create what's called a YP Connects and reach back out to youth under 21 and what we can do to help them come along into the young adult society for that. So it's all about getting the word out, education, having these platforms to speak about it, and getting our youth involved in whatever we're doing.
Absolutely. I'm going to jump back into a question here in the chat box. So the question is for the panelists: is the Black Lives Matter movement affecting mentoring in the Valley? And if yes, how? Roy?
Well, I would say I think they're impacting the conversation around policing and police brutality. I know myself, I've done my best to help convert that in where as opposed to protesting in the streets, are you willing to meet with your local law enforcement leaders in your community? I'm not sure that that's translated just yet, but I believe that that is probably the most effective next step. And I'll also say this, I'll take a little liberty to say we are in a much different position in 2020 than those that came before us. When you talk about the civil rights movement, they were not able to meet with the law enforcement agencies. They did not have relationships with the sheriff's department. They did not have relationships with the local police chiefs to where they could actually sit down and go over policy and have meetings. This is something that is happening, and I believe we can take it to another level when we bridge that gap from and with all due respect, the protesting in the streets to meeting and dialoguing and developing your policy points and plans and to those that impact change, and also lobbying your legislators to impact change as well. So I can't say that that's happened, but we're working towards it. But all of us, here's the thing, what you talked about, how can we mentor one another? What you just talked about, this is how we exist. You know, we've all had.
So Roy, I think you're okay. So we lost Roy. So we'll go ahead and move on. We're going to wrap things up. I have one more question. Before I get to that question, I do want to point out that, again, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, we're transparent and we're here to build relationships. We want to work with folks. You look in the chat, our CEO of the organization, Laura Capello, put her email there. She's committed and she's dedicated to this work. Please reach out to her if you have any questions. Of course, reach out to me. You guys have a relationship with me, but also feel free to reach out to her. She placed her email in the chat. Look, we're all hands on deck. And like, as I mentioned, we work together as a team and we take this work very seriously. So before we close out, I promise this is the last question. And I see a lot of people said we need to continue to have more conversations like this and become engaged in the various initiatives. And I do want to note that this will not be the last conversation we have. This is just the first of many conversations we're going to have. So the next conversation we're going to have will be with the Latino community on Thursday at 5 p.m. So we're going to continue to have these conversations because we're going to have to educate each other. We're going to have to talk about partnerships and leveraging each other's strengths in order to benefit our youth. That's really where we start talking about transformational change in our society, right? Is investing in our youth and ensuring that they're able to grow up to reach their full potential and become the best human beings possible in order to, move our entire country forward. And so the last question I want to jump into before closing remarks is from an educator. So the question is, what can teachers do? What can teachers do to support mentorship? What can teachers do to help us in this cause? Any of the panelists want to jump on that one? Thomas?
I would say because the teachers, you have so much time with the students, you probably have a good pinpoint of kind of where they're at and the things that they're challenged with or the things that they're doing throughout the daily basis, ongoing. So being able to leverage your experiences with that, and again, back to collaboration and partnership with mentors. And so then that way, you're hitting the students from all different angles in all different spaces. So it's, again, we're one team working together. So I think as a teacher, because you are a central place where they have to go to school, they have to go to their classroom. So being able for you to be that, really the point person to tie in, okay, a parent with a mentor, or see where the gaps are and being able to help encourage a student to go in a certain direction. I think that would be very powerful from a teacher's perspective.
Thank you, Thomas. All right. So Tremaine?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, if the teachers have information on how well each mentor or mentee is doing in school, or how or what kind of troubles they're having in the classroom, to share that information specifically with the mentor, so they can have some kind of discussion during their twice a month meetings, and kind of like what Thomas said, just kind of bridge that gap. Be someone who provides that information. Then the mentor gets, has the conversation with the student, finds out what might be wrong, or what the student would like to, work on to excel more. Then that mentor shares that information with the teacher, and hopefully, I don't quite know how to say all this, wrap this all up in one pretty bow, but just to make that student teacher school relationship function well. So
No, absolutely, Tremaine. I think you're right on. And I want to read a comment here in the chat from Mr. Peter Washington, who I know is an educator in our community and a great leader to many of our youth. He says, it's extremely critical that we listen without judgment, and more importantly, be willing to be mindful of our hidden biases as it relates to these conversations. Then provide lessons that specifically address the concerns of our students, right? So it's addressing our implicit biases. We all have them. So it's addressing those biases. And then from there, providing lessons that specifically matter to kids, right? Goes back to that listening. So thank you for that last question. And now I'll give each panelist a minute to go ahead and close us out with final thoughts. And we'll go ahead and move on to close out this session. So who would like to begin? All right, let's begin with Jeff. Why don't you go ahead and get us off?
Well, just to kind of, I guess, end on the same note that we were talking, I think that it's super important to have a good open communication between the parent, the mentor, and potentially the teacher, as we're talking about, because it's great to have the intel, and having a conversation with my mentee that I just talked to his mom and I already know some of the answers to the questions. I'm just, asking him, what his perspective is or what his experience has been, but I already have like both sides of the coin. So, it just adds texture to the conversation. So I imagine if there was a partnership with the parent, the teacher, and the mentee, like that would, make it even that would strengthen the bond and help facilitate the conversations even more. I think that is very important, the work of mentorship. And, it doesn't necessarily have to have an agenda per se. It's more so listening more than you talk, and just saying the right words at the right time instead of controlling the conversation yourself. Having
Awesome.
a safe place.
Absolutely. Creating a safe environment to have these conversations. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Let's jump on over to Ashlee. Closing remarks.
All right. Well, I know just being on this panel and listening to everybody, I walked away with a bunch of information about Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and it has me excited I'm not part of it, but I'm excited about wanting to join and become a mentor myself, and knowing how important it is just from my own personal experience that we have to give back. We have to extend that hand back and pull our youth up, and just to give back in that way. So I'm looking forward to partnering with you more, Devin, and getting more information and getting the word out, especially with our young professionals, because I think this is very, very important to us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ashlee. We appreciate it, and we would love to partner. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Thomas?
Yes, I'd agree with everything that the fellow panelists said. I think my one takeaway, or that I would like to encourage everyone with, is collective action. I think it really does that whole village model aspect of things, of us like collective communication, having a collective agenda allowing us to all stay on the same page and being able to encourage one another, and just for everyone to know across the board, whatever discipline you bring to the table, it's significant. And I think every single role is significant throughout the process of, it's a parent, if it's a mentor, it's a teacher, educator, whatever your role is, that being part of the collective is what will lead a pathway for our children's success.
Thank you, Thomas. We appreciate it. Tremaine.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone for joining the call, because I know there's probably a million things you could have been doing, but this is really an important topic, mentorship. And, just want to echo some of the thoughts that were discussed earlier on. But, if you think about who will influence you to be who you are today, you have an opportunity to do that for a child that's looking for a mentor. So please consider joining Big Brothers Big Sisters. I'm gonna have a talk with my family about it. I've got 2 young children and a wife, and a lot of responsibilities, but this is important, and it doesn't require a whole lot of time, but I know it's important for me to do. So I hope you all will keep that in mind and get involved with the organization however you can.
Thank you, Tremaine. I appreciate it. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and a virtual round of applause for all of our panelists. I mean, you guys were excellent, and we thank you. We all know you're busy people. We know you're very busy. And wait, before we end, I see Brother Roy jump back. I'm gonna give him his minute or two to close out. Brother Roy, everyone just gave their last thought on this session. And so glad you're able to get back to us. Roy, close us out. Close out, please.
Yeah, I would just say we got to approach this as a servant. Look to serve your youth as a mentor, because you could be the person that changes their life. We could be the person that changes their life. And so don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to get guidance. Just work to serve and help leave their life better than the way you found it. That's the attitude I would say we need to approach this, and just how we interact with one another totally. So thank you, Devin, for this opportunity, and I look forward to continuing the work with you and Big Brothers, Big Sisters.
Thank you, Brother Roy. We appreciate it. And as I was just expressing my gratitude to all of the panelists who took time out of their busy schedules to join us tonight, and all of the attendees who took time to join us on a Tuesday evening during dinner time. I know it's rough. We have a lot happening in our communities. And so I want to thank you all for giving us just a bit of your time to discuss the power of mentoring in the Black community. And I'll close out with this. We touched on a little bit about the benefits of being a mentor yourself. And I think Oprah said it best when she said, a mentor is someone who allows you to see the hope in yourself. And so understand that, right? It's reciprocal. There's benefits for our youth, absolutely, but there's certainly benefits for those who decide to mentor themselves and get involved. So our website, link to our volunteer page is in the chat. My email, my cell phone number is in the chat. Let's connect. Let's make it happen, right? Let's make it happen. We have to act with a sense of urgency. Our kids need us. They need us now, right now. We have youth ready to go right now. And oh, by the way, if you know youth that can benefit from our program, please send them our way. On our website, with the link that I posted in the chat, there's a youth referral form. So for all the teachers that are on this call and anyone else, if you know youth that can benefit from using a mentor, you can fill out that form. And then we'll work to contact their parent or guardian and to see how we can get them in our program. And it's no cost, right? We don't charge any children. We accept all children from all different walks of life, different abilities, okay? And so thank you again. We certainly have a tough mission ahead of us, but if we all come together, we can certainly accomplish it. And so this session was recorded. So we will be sharing it later on via social media, and we'll send it out via email. But again, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Have a great evening.